This ASMR is designed for people that are maybe suffering financially. Maybe you don't have a good job right now. Maybe you're not good with money. And maybe you just need to relax a little bit and calm down and relax at the end of a long, long day. And again, this is episode number 2. I want you guys to get to know me a little bit so that I can share with you a long, long journey of building wealth slowly over time. It didn't just happen. I was a financial train wreck for multiple years. So I'm 58 years old right now. I was broke at 40 years old. And I built a $1.5 million net worth in about 15 to 18 years. It was in 2020 that I got to $1 million net worth. And I know that, a lot of people will say, well, $1 million doesn't seem like a lot of money. But when you think that most people can't get there, then it's a lot of money, right? That's how you have to think about it. And one thing I can tell you is that I was never just saving for retirement. I want you to take that word out of your vocabulary. Retirement is a word that should be banned from the English language. Because when I was younger, I just wanted to build wealth. And that's how I want you to think about it. I know that many of you may have a lot of debt. You may not know how to manage money, but by the 15th or 20th episode of ASMR Money Mentor, I think you will know how to accomplish exactly what you want to accomplish. And let me be clear, I'm not the kind of person that's going to share with you things that are really crazy, like risky investments or anything like that. I got wealthy the old-fashioned way. And I'm going to share that with you throughout these episodes. My name is Evan Thomas, and I went to college back when I was 18 years old. I guess I'll start there. I'll talk about later how in my family, my father had some financial troubles. And unfortunately, I followed in his same path for a short amount of time. But let's just start at 18 years old. So again, I'm 58 years old today, or I'm 58 years old now. But I went to college for communications, and it took me 5 years to get through school. I didn't know anything about money. They don't teach you about money. They don't teach you anything unless you take finance courses, and then it's just probably high-level business type things. But what about personal finance? Things that people need to know. They don't teach it. So I graduated from college, and then it really took me a long time to find a good job. A year and a half. I don't know why. I really couldn't find the job that would pay me so I could get my own apartment. It's funny now in the year 2024 that young people, it seems to be that a lot of young people are living with their parents. And that's good, but they have to finally get out there and, prove themselves. And I think when I was 18, well, actually 22 when I graduated from college, 22 or 23, I'm thankful that I really wanted to my own, even though it was really, really hard. So at 24 years old, I got my very first job, making about $20,000 a year. And this was in 1990. Did I already say that? I'm not sure if I did. But in 1990, that was my first job, making $20,000 a year. And I guess I spent a lot of money on, believe it or not, clothing. Crazy. I wasn't buying really expensive things, but it was a lot of little things like clothing, shirts, pants, whatever. I wanted to look really successful. And I guess I did. I even leased a car. Crazy. I think at that time it was $500 a month, something ridiculous. So I ran up about $40,000 worth of credit card debt by the time 1995 rolls around. So in 4 or 5 years, I had $40,000 of debt. That was twice the amount of income I had in 1 year. Right? I was making about $20,000 a year. $20,000. I had racked up $40,000 worth of debt. And I remember opening up the credit card statements, because back then it was all mailed to you. It wasn't electronic. And I would look at the minimum paid due, and I'd be like, yeah, I can afford that. I can afford $25 a month. Crazy. And then I got another credit card, and another credit card, and another credit card. Soon I had, I don't know, 7 or 8 different credit cards. I think it was ridiculous. I suddenly realized that I was having a hard time even making the minimum payments on the credit cards. So this was the late 1994. Yeah. 28 years old in 1998 or 1994. And I really started to feel the brunt of all of that debt, because I was not, again, making much money at all. And so I decided to claim bankruptcy because I lost my job. Suddenly I have no job. I was getting unemployment, I remember. Trying to catch up. I didn't want to ask my family for money. I do, however, remember a conversation I had with my father. We don't have a good relationship now, but back then, I remember my dad asking me, how much debt do you have? And I said to him on the phone, I said, I don't know. Really? So, a little while ago, of course, at the beginning of this episode, I told you right now I have a $1.5 million net worth, and I don't say that to brag by any means. I'm anonymous. My name's not really Evan Thomas. So I'm not doing this because I want to brag. I'm doing it because I can't believe I did it, and I want to share with you how I did it. But does that sound like the Evan Thomas that you'll be learning about that was able to save his way to a $1.5 million net worth? Not at all. I had no clue how much debt I had. I told my dad that. I'm like, I have no idea. And he said, well, you need to add it up. And I said, okay. But I ignored that request. I never added it up for another 2 to 3 weeks. So I remember I got all my credit card statements out. I got a calculator, and I started to add it up. $10,000 here, $7,500 here, $8,000 here, and it was about $40,000. And so in the bankruptcy, it included that debt plus my my leased car. I had a shiny black Nissan Altima with a sunroof. I remember during the last 6 months where I was struggling, I couldn't even get my breath to make payments or anything. In my brain, I decided not to wash my car because I wanted to teach myself how not to want the car. And the way that I taught myself to not want the car was to not wash it. Kind of crazy thinking, right? That made it easier for me to take it back to the dealership, which I did. I drove it there and I said, listen, you've got to take this car. I can't pay for it anymore. I'll never forget this, but my dad gave me some money, $1,000, to buy a little beat-up car. It was another Nissan. I think it was a Nissan Sentra. It was a train wreck. Believe it or not, the engine was put together with a coat hanger. I'll never forget that. I looked under the hood and I saw that somebody took a coat hanger to keep the engine inside of it so it didn't fall out of the car. 28 years old, and this is what my life had become after going to college, doing everything that you're supposed to do. And I hit a complete emotional bottom. So how do you like the story so far? It's really hard for me to even talk about it, but it's important to talk about it, and it's important to share with people. Because if you're struggling financially right now, you may not be able to sleep. So hopefully this video is helping you to relax. Maybe you've got your earbuds in, maybe you're laying down, maybe you're trying to get some rest. I'm here to tell you that there is a way out if you are struggling. Trust me, there is a way out. Now, for me, obviously, I got rid of $40,000 of debt in one fell swoop. In 1995, I hired an attorney. I went to the court date. I remember the judge looked at me and said, Evan, are you ever going to do this again? And I remember I looked up at him and I said, no. I was so ashamed. I said, no, I promise I will never, ever, ever do this again. I've learned my lesson. It was one of the most devastating experiences of my entire life. I remember at that court hearing, there was somebody that I knew from a credit union that I owed like $6,000 to on a credit card, and she was there in the room with me. I was so embarrassed. She was there to protest, I guess, the fact that I was going bankrupt. And I remember looking at her and I was so ashamed. I remember I went back to my apartment that day. I walked in, looked around the room, and literally fell to the floor and just started to cry, really. I was literally devastated. I could not believe that I let that happen to me, and yet it did happen to me. And as I said earlier in this episode, I already had the experience of my father going bankrupt when I was in high school. My parents were getting a divorce, and my dad actually filed for bankruptcy. We had two little sailboats that they signed over to my name and my brother's name. And it was also, they were going through a divorce at the same time. So I just find it interesting that I knew about that experience, and yet I still did the exact same thing at a much younger age than when my father did it too. I was 29 years old in 1995. 24 to 29, in those 5 years, I racked up $40,000 worth of debt. Now, to me, that was a lot of money. Even in the year 2024, that's still a lot of money, right? So I've got some scissors here. I hope you're enjoying this episode. I hope you're getting sleepy. I'll probably have to change the pattern of my microphone because I think it's just picking up this side. I probably need to change it. I'm new at this, ASMR, but I am a money mentor, and I want to be your money mentor as you come back and learn more about how I did what I did over the course of a long time. You know, again, I find it so sad that I knew what I was doing, but I remember thinking in 1991 and 92, you know, I had that job making 20 grand a year. I just assumed that I would get more money every single year. Like, right? Isn't that what they tell you that's going to happen? That you're going to get a good job and then your boss is going to give you more money. Now, stay tuned for subsequent episodes because that did happen to me later in life, but not until age 32. So we're talking, I was back here at age 28. Another 4 years before I would get any kind of traction whatsoever. And even at age 32, I was still broke for another 8 years up until the age of 40. So I was able to build this net worth of $1.5 million from age 40 to age 55, right? 15 years. And then another 3 years to get the 1.5 million, the 500,000. But I also want to share with you in this episode that I did not make over $100,000 up until recently per year. So it's not like I was making $300,000-$400,000 a year. So I'll talk about that in more episodes, but I just want you to know in this second episode of ASMR Money Mentor that I had a very modest income. I remember in 2006 I was making about $40,000 a year. I think at one point I wanted to see how much money that is now, and I forget in terms of inflation, but anyway, I'll bring that to another episode. But I had an extremely modest income. It's interesting the dichotomy of what we can be inside of ourselves. We can be different people. In other words, I can think back to being 24, 25, 26, and 27 and not really caring that I was spending this money. What was I thinking? Well, I was thinking that I was going to get bigger increases and that job would come where I would suddenly get $50,000 a year, $60,000 a year, and I could pay back all the damage from those 5 years. Well, guess what? That job never came. That big jump in salary never came, not even at age 32. When I got what I considered to be the job with the company that would change my destiny forever. And I'll be talking more about that. I'm not going to concentrate on that in this episode. But think about yourself right now. Like I know some of you may have, like I said earlier, mountains of debt. Maybe you have $40, $50, $60, $70,000 worth of debt. You'll need to come up with a way to pay that off and stop continuing your spending patterns if you have really bad spending patterns, because debt is going to kill you in terms of if you want to build wealth. And building wealth doesn't have to be $1 million. It could be $500,000. It could be $300,000. It has to be whatever you consider is your own personal best. That's what I think everybody should do, is come up with what they feel is their own personal best and stick to that goal. If you've got debt right now, then you're going to have to really think about bringing that down. So I don't know how old you are. You know how old you are. You know what your expenses are. I'll be talking in other episodes about a build a budget. I won't go into detail about that right now, but even as a millionaire at this point, I still have my build a budget that I created in 2005. I work that budget every year. It takes a few months to get it going, and I release it at the beginning of the year. I put my income coming in, my expenses going out, and I look at what is that difference. That's your savings rate. And it's what you do with that savings rate every single year that will slowly build an engine for yourself that's going to be large enough to pay you income, passive income. Now we'll talk about it later. There's other considerations in that equation as well that you have to think about, and it's where I'm at right now because I'm building up my cash reserves for the next year or so, because I plan to retire at the end of this year or maybe next year in 2025, so stay tuned. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but as you get closer to retirement, it's a good idea sometimes to build up some cash reserves, so if the markets go down, you have cash reserves in which to pay your expenses to get through bad times, because you don't want to sell shares when they're priced really low. You want to sell high and rebalance in good times to a balanced portfolio. More about that later. But back to where I was a young person. You know, did I tell you in the first episode I have a YouTube channel, another one. I'm called The Frugal Millionaire, if you want to check it out. I have episodes that I've produced 2 months in advance. I'm really kind of proud of myself. I don't have a big following, just like I don't have a following here. But I'm going to share with you something that I'll probably talk about on the YouTube channel, and that is this, that I look at this YouTube channel the same way I look at how I build wealth. In other words, first of all, I'm glad you're here, but don't be offended by what I'm going to say. I would be doing this regardless if you are here or not. Meaning, if I have 1 view, that's fine. If I have 100,000 views, that's great. And I hope that this someday does turn into some type of passive income. Well, I guess it won't be passive because I'll do YouTube videos, but you know, maybe it'll get to a point where it'll pay half of my need in retirement. So let's say I need about $50,000. I've got 6 more minutes to go. I want to make these about 30 minutes. So if I need 50 grand, let's say, and let's not even talk about Social Security. If you have a side hustle or a job that pays $25,000, that's half of your need. So if the $50,000 was a 5% withdrawal rate, or let's say a 6% withdrawal rate on the money that you have, you've just now cut it down to a 3% withdrawal rate. Now, are you kidding? A 3% withdrawal rate. Your money can last a very, very long time, probably more than 30 years, than if you had it at 5 or 6% as a withdrawal rate. I hope that makes sense. So, more about that a little bit later, but one thing you need to do as you're saving and investing over time to be successful, and I'll talk more about this, is that you cannot look at the year you're in right now. It's insignificant right now. But this year, right now, will be very significant in 15 to 20 years. The money you save right now and invest right now really has no value because you're not selling the shares at all. Does that make sense? But you're doing the work that you need to do because it's going to create something much larger in the future. Just like a YouTube channel. I mean, let's face it. First of all, I want to say that I absolutely love YouTube. I'll talk more about this a little bit later, but in my career, I never really did what I set out to do in college. I wanted to work at a television station. I wanted to be in production. I love all of those kinds of things. Never quite happened for me. I'll talk more about that later. But it did propel me into the frugality and the desire to become successful because life wasn't making me successful, if that makes sense. So I took it upon myself to make myself successful because it wasn't happening for me in the career choice that I wanted. I will talk more about that later. Just a few more minutes. I hope you're enjoying this episode. Again, I'm doing this around the microphone, but it's probably not doing a darn thing because I don't have the, I mean, I'm sure you can hear it, and it might be nice, right? Don't you love that sound? I love it. I love ASMR. I love videos. I love personal finance. All of these things are bringing together things that I absolutely love. And because I wasn't successful in my career path when I was younger, in the creative areas, it doesn't mean I can't do it now. So think about that for your own life. I had to switch gears in my head and said to myself, Evan, if you want to be successful with money and with personal finance, you're going to have to give yourself a paradigm shift. And it's that paradigm shift that then propelled me, again, as I mentioned, into what I needed to do to become successful. So that's what I had for you guys in this episode. I hope you're really sleepy right now. I hope you got a lot out of this. I want to say that I appreciate you guys for being here. Maybe you'll be watching this many years into the future. If you are, I'm so happy you're here. I appreciate you. I believe in you. And I congratulate you for every step of the way that you guys make towards being a better steward of your own money, of your own destiny, of your own financial independence. We'll talk about what financial independence is. It's achievable regardless of how much money you have coming in. Remember, I talked about a personal best. It's all relative to your expenses. On this channel, I'll be explaining to you exactly what my expenses are. They're very low. I'll tell you my income and everything. So again, that's what I had for you guys on this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time on ASMR Money Mentor.